Okay, we're recording. So I'd like to welcome Rabbi Jeffrey Kurtz Lendner. Jeff, thank you for joining us from rainy, cold Mississippi. And we might be joined by a couple of other colleagues shortly, and we'll just let them join in when they should arrive. But
Okay.
I'd love for you to start by introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about yourself, and if you want to lead into a Devar Torah or teaching with that, that would be great as well.
Okay. So let me start with letting you know about my background. Uh, Basically, I know I send in a comprehensive resume, but the point is that I've worked in a lot of different areas. I've worked at Hillel. I've worked at a JCC. I've worked at a couple of synagogues. I worked at a day school. And so, I kind of have an eclectic rabbinate. Um, I served as the president of the New Orleans Rabbinic Council when I was there. I served as president of the Broward County Board of Rabbis when I was there. We partnered with my congregation, partnered with the Federation and the Broward Board of Rabbis in engaging in dialogues, through different levels of the community, whether it was on the social justice level, or whether it was on Israel solidarity with some of our evangelical friends, where we would come together and focus on on support for Israel. And that, to me, my rabbinate has been about what's maximizing what is good for the Jewish community, and not my own personal agendas. I stay out of politics, but not out of government. So, I did have the opportunity to give an invocation for President Obama when he came down to Florida, but I also worked with Florida Governor Rick Scott, and now with Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant. So that's the range of the political spectrum that I don't feel focused on. In my professional work, I don't focus on one party or the other. I believe, what's good for the Jewish community is to maintain excellent relationships wherever there are opportunities to do so. When I was president of the Broward County Board of Rabbis, I took that position very seriously. That was a volunteer position, 2 years. But I remember after I left, not after my left, but after my term was up, there were people who were nervous because they said, you brought this how our Board of Rabbis operates to the next level, and we don't know that we can fill your shoes. I said, sure you can.
It's very flattering.
Yeah, it was very flattering to my colleagues, and basically I gave it a lot of heart and soul and attention, because I thought that's, as president, that was my role, during those 2 years. And I've always had great relations with federations wherever I was, and great relations, with JCCs, and it hasn't only been about my own personal rabbinate, but I've gone over and above. I served on a board of 2 federations. I served on the board of the JCC. I worked for JCCs. So I believe that we're not in a position where we should be engaging in turf wars per se. I'd rather see us find opportunities for collaboration, and I always felt that the collaboration always worked better when it was good for the Jewish community, good for the Jewish community to see the leaders of the various different organizations working together. So that I felt very strongly about that.
Perfect. Yes. I don't know if if you're able to move the microphone a little bit, it's sort of in blocking your face a bit. And I'd love to see you rather than the microphone. So maybe
it's such a good microphone though.
There, I can see.
You don't want to see it. It's a great microphone.
It's a beautiful microphone. So that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So thanks for sharing a little bit again and putting your background into context for us. And you told us to have chapter 32 of Exodus, the golden calf story, yes?
Yes, the golden calf story. All right. So I have a little bit of a different take on the interpretation of this story. When Moses was waiting up on the mountain, when he was up on the mountain getting the Ten Commandments, the people gathered against Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who shall go before us. For that man Moses, who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him." Okay, so first of all, this is the guy who redeemed them from 400 years of slavery, and it almost reads to me that he disappears for a few minutes, and then it says that man Moses, like that guy, oh yeah, Moses. So it seems like the people have forgotten him already. We don't know what happened to him. So Aaron said them to take off their gold, and all the people took off their gold, and he took it and he cast it. He took from them and cast in a mold and made it into a golden calf. And they exclaimed, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." And then Aaron declared that it would be a festival for the Lord. Okay, this part is all straightforward. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, "Hurry down for your people, right? Not my people, this is your people. Like, do you know what your son did today? When you come home from work, hurry down for your people who you brought out of the land of Egypt have acted basely. They have been quick to turn aside and they made a molten calf, etc." Okay. The Lord further said to Moses, "I see that this is a stiff-necked people. Now let me be that my anger may blaze forth against them, that I may destroy them and make of you a great nation." But Moses implored the Lord his God, saying, "Let not your anger, O Lord, blaze forth against your people, whom you delivered from the land of Egypt with a great power and with a mighty hand. Let not the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he delivered them, only to kill them off in the mountains and annihilate them from the face of the earth." Okay, so Moses is in a leadership role, and mostly what his job was to do was to lead the people of Israel. But here we sometimes see, and this is the Torah telling us this, that Moses sometimes had to stand up to God. And traditionally we would interpret this as God testing Moses. But from the narrative itself, it just seems like Moses is not only managing the people, he's also managing God's anger. That's kind of bold because it's Moses calling God to task. Okay, so as soon as Moses came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, he became enraged and hurled the tablets from his hands, and so on and so forth. So we're up to verse 21. Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do that you have brought such great sin upon them?" Aaron said, "Let not my Lord be enraged. You know that this people is bent on evil. They said to me, 'Make us a god to lead us.' For that man Moses, who brought us from the land of Egypt, we cannot tell what has happened to him. So I said to them, 'Whoever has gold, take it off.' They gave it to me, and I hurled it into the fire, and out came this calf." Okay. Anything here remind you of your own kids again? How did the lamp break? Well, I don't know, this ball, I was playing with the ball and it started rolling around, and then the next thing I knew, the lamp broke, right? So out came this calf on its own, except the Torah explicitly told us at the very beginning of the chapter that Aaron formed it into a calf. It didn't just come out. It was Aaron who he cast that gold into the mold, and Aaron made the calf. And yet here he's taking no responsibility for it. Then it says, Moses saw that the people were out of control. And then the Torah, the narrative says, since Aaron had let them get out of control. So the text is clearly blaming Aaron for letting them get out of control. That he was the number 2 in charge, And as number two, he couldn't keep them in control. Okay. And then Moses said to the people, "You have been guilty of a great sin, yet I will now go up to the Lord. Perhaps I may win forgiveness for your sin." Moses went back to the Lord and said, "Alas, this people is guilty of a sin and making for themselves a calf of gold. Now, if you will forgive their sin, well and good. But if not, erase me from the record you have written." Okay. So, at some point in the narrative, and I'm trying to, I didn't want to go through every text. First of all, we know the text. Second of all, I don't want to take up too much time. But clearly, at one point in the text, God says, "I'm going to destroy this people and start over with you." So here, Moses has two options. Option one is he saves the people and he gets to be credited as the person who led the Israelite people out of the land of Egypt, in which case he gets great honor for posterity. Or the other option is that they were so evil that God kills them all except for Moses and starts over. And then instead of being the children of Israel, we'd all be known as the children of Moses. So Moses, and then his name would also be remembered for posterity. So Moses has two options, and both of them are good. But instead, he chooses option three. Option three, "If you will forgive their sin, well and good, but if not, erase me from the record you have written." Okay, so Moses proposes to God option three, which is, "If you take them out, take me with them. Okay, don't start over with me. If they're gone, just go with somebody else altogether. I'm not gonna take that option." So that's a clear contrast to Aaron, where it clearly says that Aaron was responsible for the sin of the people, and instead the text says that Aaron had let the people get out of control, and Aaron had said, "Well, I took they all gave me their gold and I threw it in the fire, and out came this calf." So he's taking no responsibility, whereas Moses, who was actually not the guilty party, because where was Moses? He was up with God. He was on the mountain with God. He couldn't possibly be in two places at once. And so Moses bears no culpability for the sin of the people, and yet he's prepared to go down with the ship. He said to God, "Take me down with them." And so what I think is happening here, especially because of the little comments like when the Torah says Aaron had let the people get out of control, and when it says that when Aaron claims that I threw the gold in and out came this calf, when we contrast that with Moses, who did not sin, but who is prepared to accept full responsibility for the sin of the people, I think we're seeing a demonstration of integrity and leadership by contrasting Moses' leadership to that of Aaron. And I think with that, I think that's a lesson that could well be understood from this text, and one that I like to share with others. All right, thank you.
Thank you. That's beautiful reading of the text. I really appreciate it very much. Could you, I know you've talked sort of overarching about your leadership roles. So are there areas of your communal leadership experience in particular that are noteworthy that would be important to share with us?
I think one of the things, and specifically how it refers to this position, given that the majority of this position, I believe, is working for the Board of Rabbis. My colleagues have always liked working with me from throughout the spectrum. I've worked, when I was ordained as a conservative rabbi, but my first job was Hillel, which was basically serving the whole community. And during that time, I also had a good relationship with Chabad. I eventually joined the CCAR. And, as I moved around, I established relationships with all the different communities. One of my closest friends in Broward County was the Orthodox rabbi down the street from us. and he was at a congregation where we would talk about the same things. The issues he faced were the exact same issues I faced, in terms of managing leadership and working with different stakeholders and everybody having their own agenda and that kind of thing. So we would go for lunch and we would talk about these things, and he and I really connected on that. I believe in creating connections and cultivating relationships. And as I said, my colleagues have enjoyed working with me, and I like working with colleagues. So from that point of view, I would, I would love to work with, working with my colleagues and for my colleagues would be an excellent opportunity based on some of the experiences that I've had in working in the community. I understand the needs of pulpit rabbis because I've been a pulpit rabbi, but I've also worked in organizations, and I'm ready for this move in my career, seeing this opportunity. I would love the opportunity to work for a board of rabbis, and I can see how strong the Chicago Board of Rabbis is.
Sure. So you have had a variety of positions, and what is it about working for the Chicago Board of Rabbis specifically that is of most of interest to you? What do you like about this position opportunity?
Well, I really like the fact of, first of all, you have a history, so it's not like building something from scratch. It's coming in and following in the shoes of my good friend Michael Belinsky, who I knew back when we worked together in Hillel, and knowing the kind of work that he's done and knowing that he's been successful in what he was doing and knowing who he is as a person gives me a lot of confidence that if this is the kind of role that he's been successful in, then I feel that gives me a good feeling that I think I could also be successful in this, because I know him and I know his style and his personality and all those things. You have a strong history. It looks like there's a very involved board of rabbis, and when I was president of the two rabbinic associations that I've been involved with, I really enjoyed those positions, and to be able to do that work full time or almost full time or what have you, but to make that my paid employment working for my colleagues would give me a lot of satisfaction. I love to see bringing rabbis of different, from all streams together to work on programs together when we can, understanding that there are some boundaries that can't be crossed for philosophical reasons, but then finding the areas where we can work across lines and do things together for the sake of the community, and working with my colleagues who are, I'm going to be learning from my colleague. Not only will I be, whatever I've learned up until this point, but I would love to keep learning from my colleagues as we develop, future planning for the Chicago Board of Rabbis, and to have that as my primary network of employers per se. I think I love that opportunity.
Fantastic. So the mics sort of crept back more prominently. There you go. Yeah, you've got a great face. We'd like to see it.
Always says go more in front of the microphone.
Yeah, well, in this instance, the camera, I think, is more, we want to be able to see the person who's talking to us too. We want to hear you, and we can. I'll make you a deal. If I can't hear you, I'll let you know. I'll know.
Sounds good.
All right. So talk for a minute. If tomorrow, we call you and say, Jeff, we'd like you to be the new executive vice president of the Chicago Board of Rabbis, what are your goals for the CBR, and what are your personal goals, let's say, for the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would probably close my door and start doing some dancing around my office. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing is, I've read through your website, and I've looked through, first of all, I know several colleagues in the community. Steve Mason, I actually worked for Steve when I was a high school student in Buffalo. I got to know him real well. I believe Alan Kensky is in the community. And Ari Margolis is in the community, and he was a student. His family grew up at the temple where I was a rabbi in Florida. And so to be able, in a sense, what I want to do is learn from my colleagues and hear from my colleagues, and I can present my own personal agenda for what the Chicago Board of Rabbis is. But I think what I would like to do is I'd like to meet with our rabbis. And before I come up with a specific agenda for this role, I'd want to hear what their interests and concerns are and develop an agenda based on learning from the feedback that I'm getting from people. Maybe there are things that they've loved that they want to keep doing. Maybe there are things that they didn't like that they'd like to see about changing. So really that's my style of leadership and going in and hearing from others. I mean, I've never lived in Chicago. The last time I visited Chicago, I think I was 5 when my grandmother still lived there. And the only thing I was focusing on was the Skokie Swift. So, you know, I'd have to do more research and get some more details about exactly what the agenda items are, but also know the source of those agenda items. Where are they being driven from? Are they being driven by Michael? Are they being driven by the leadership of the Board of Rabbis? Are they being driven by your Jewish, the Federation? So I'd like to know more about that before I give my own agenda of what I think we should be doing. However, having said that, my global agenda is to either enhance the relationships among the different rabbis in the community, or if they're already in great shape, then to maximize the opportunities based on those relationships and see what more we could do as a group of rabbis that can have a greater impact on the community in terms of what they see, what the community sees us doing together. I think at an APAC event at their annual conference, I think it was maybe 3 years ago, I went to their annual conference, and it was great to see an Orthodox, a conservative, and a Reform rabbi up on the stage together, and one of them said, "When else would you ever see rabbis who are Orthodox, conservative, and Reform all standing together in unity?" And it was echoed by all 3 people up there, and that was a beautiful sight, just to see the 3 rabbis coming together from these different streams of Judaism. I like to maximize on that. I'd like to see if there are areas that the Board of Rabbis, or a segment of the Board of Rabbis would like to work in partnership with outside the Jewish community and cross-community conversations, whether it, be addressing some of the social needs of the city or some of the needs in terms of crime or what have you. And those are the things that I really want to hear about from our leaders. But then also, as I learn the Chicago community and come up with ideas based on what I think would be great in Chicago, then I would also share that with our colleagues too, and get feedback. I don't believe in coming in and imposing my view on others, but I like to come in and hear what people have to say and try to implement their agenda, because I am the paid staff. But at the same time, when I come up with an idea for leadership, I'd like to explore that possibility and see if my colleagues are interested in it as well.
Terrific. You mentioned your APAC experience, and yes. Israel today is unifying, and Israel can also be a contentious issue outside and even inside the Jewish community. We've experienced occasional conflict within our rabbinic community here in Chicago. How might you see yourself handling such a situation?
Well, the thing is that, first of all, I think when, I do every week in my temple newsletter, I have a section called Israel, the Good News. And it takes 3 stories out of the Israeli or Jewish media, and sometimes not even into Jewish media, but primarily from those sources, and finds out what great things are happening in Israel. Now, regardless of what I think about Netanyahu's leadership, in terms of what's happening, in terms of how his leadership is perceived in this country. Um, he's done a lot of great things. Hungary is opening up a trade mission with Israel. Uh, he went to Chad for the first time an Israeli prime minister ever went to Chad. He went there a couple weeks ago. And Chad is sending a high delegation to Israel to enhance those relationships. He has cultivated relationships with Arab allies in the region, primarily in terms of their unity against Iran, but not exclusively. It's also based on economic interest. That he's cultivated relationships beyond Iran, but on mutual trade agreements that's financially beneficial for both countries. And some of that stuff's under the radar, but it's not that far under radar. All you have to do is pull out the Jerusalem Post or the Times of Israel, and those stories are there. So if there's the way I look at it is this way. Netanyahu is one prime minister who's going to be temporal, okay? We remember King David from, 3,000 years ago. How many of us remember who Alexander Yanai was? Okay? Alexander Yanai was the Hasmonean appointed king who helped the nation of Judea. It reached its peak under his leadership, but yet most people don't know who Alexander Yanai was. How long will Netanyahu be remembered? The point is that Israel has to be the haven for the Jewish people for eternity. We need to have a place that becomes the eternal home of the Jewish people that will always be there. Back in 2008, when Russia invaded the country, I think it was Georgia at the time. Israel sent 3 of its planes to rescue refugees from that war. I mean, is that the same Israel that in 1948 had rickety airplanes that were piloted by American pilots? And basically they had 3 planes at the time, and they used those planes to outmaneuver the Egyptians, and the Egyptians thought they had more. It's not the same country anymore. But so as a country grows stronger, sometimes it gets a little arrogant. People change. I mean, it's not about Israel. It's about people and who they are and the circumstances around them. And so I think we need to focus on what are the good, positive opportunities there are happening, the great things that are continuing to happen in Israel, regardless of what you think about the politics there. And there's opportunities for political engagement also. I mean, to me, whether you're right or left, you can be, in this country, people are often, most people are either Democrats or Republicans. Yet, we all support America. So Jews, sometimes we don't like what the Israeli government is doing, but if we want to have a vote in that, then we should go there and move there and vote. And if not, I think we should find the opportunities to maximize our relationship with Israel. And then if we get into some heated conversations, we should know that this is what the forum is going to be. And this is the place where our colleagues can get into those conversations if they want to. But let's remember that they are going to, that we need to disagree without being disagreeable.
Thank
if
you.
possible.
Thanks. Yeah. Your passion really comes across strongly, and I appreciate you sharing with us. Switching gears, so I know you, at time in your career, you were working in Hillel, you mentioned, and it's in your resume. Tell us about your experience mentoring, teaching, not just kids, but young adults, young Jewish professionals as well.
Sure.
There is a part of this job that is working within the Federation, and working on outreach and working with a cohort of younger people to help them find ways, maybe non-traditional, but ways to reach out and draw our Jewish people together. So tell us about your experiences there.
Sure. Well, I think the best experience I had was when I was in Florida, and we launched a partnership with the Next Door. I think it's a division of Synagogue 3000, but we launched a partnership there, and we got some grant money, and we hired a staff person, and everybody said, "Look, this is Florida. You're never going to get anywhere with that. If Jews want to feel Jewish, all they have to do is walk outside, and they feel Jewish, If they want to get a challah, they don't have to go to the kosher bakery. They can go to the convenience store at the gas station to get a challah." So they said this is never going to work. And yet, we built that program up to 50 participants. People who were nominally involved in their congregations, but they felt their congregations didn't have anything for them. And we brought them together from a multiplicity of organizations, and we had regular programming, sometimes once a month, sometimes twice a month, a variety of different things. And we brought them together on their terms. Sometimes they would go to a bar. Sometimes they would go and they go to one of those pottery places and make some Judaica for Passover or something like that. And I would certainly, the times when they had, they would sometimes invite me over for their Shabbat dinners, and I would show up, but I would always show up for a little while, share a little something with them and leave. And they appreciated that too, because these are young adults. They don't need a 50-year-old rabbi sitting with them having dinner the whole night. So, I would come in for a little while, and by giving that gave them that point of connection to the Jewish community, and they knew that they felt that I understood where they're coming from, and so by doing that, I think that made them more comfortable being willing to come to things, so they didn't feel like they were going to have to, hide from the rabbi. They knew that the rabbi was going to be an ally and a friend and understood boundaries and things like that. And then when we have some teaching opportunities, I would come in and teach when they'd want to learn something. And I would offer too. I wouldn't just wait for the invitation. I'd offer things, and they'd say, Rabbi, why don't you come to the Passover Seder, and share your insights on Passover with us. And that we had, I think, almost 100 people at, and that was a great opportunity. That was fabulous. We have a similar program here in Jackson, except in Jackson it happens more naturally because, 2 Jews in a zip code here in Jackson is a ghetto. So being here in Jackson, the young Jews in town, there's maybe between the people who work for the Institute of Southern Jewish Life and the people who are medical students or young professionals, that there just aren't that many of them, you're looking at maybe 24 total. So they kind of gather together naturally. And so what we've done is, since I got here, we started supporting their programming, finding a few dollars here and there to help let them do the kinds of things that they were doing, but we would pay for it. And I would come in, visit them at their events and spend some time with them and talk with them and then leave again, because they wanted to have, they made some great latkes. Some of them did. Some of them took hash browns and mashed them up and tried to turn them into latkes, and they tasted like mashed up hash browns trying to be a latke. So, but it's a fun group of people because they're there because they want to be there, not because, they're done with I'm doing it because my parents want me to, they're done with that. So they're there because they want to be with each other. And when you can create that kind of opportunity, they want to come do that, and then find the points of Jewish connection that they'd like to have. Either if they would like opportunities to connect with the established conventional community, we would do that. If they want to do something on their own, we would support that. So, and I love working with that. And in college, it was the same thing. When I worked at Tulane, the students who came, they were on their own. They could do whatever they wanted. So I offered a class thinking in my brilliance, in my 32, yeah, I think I was around 32 at that time. My brilliance, I thought, this is going to get people out. Let's talk about Jews and sex, right? So what did they talk about? The Messiah. Like they kept talking about the Messiah. I'm like, I'm here offering you a class on Judaism and sex, and you want to talk about the Messiah? I don't get it. They go, oh, Rabbi, we know about sex. We don't know about the Messiah. so, so that was a little eye opening for me too. Like, sometimes what you think is going to be appeal to them based on stereotype doesn't really appeal to them. So you work with a key group of leaders within that community and help them guide you as well. I love doing that kind of stuff.
Fantastic. So just briefly, because I want to give the committee members who are here an opportunity if they have any questions to ask as well. But can you tell us briefly about your organizational style and your comfort with technology?
Yeah, I mean, very comfortable with technology. I had a computer consultant who worked for us at one place, and I would call him, and he goes, I always knew when Jeff called, I had to pull off the road. It wasn't going to be a simple question. So, yeah, because if it was a simple question, I would have fixed it. Yes, I'm very comfortable with technology, with Zoom, with Skype, with internet, with Facebook, and, it's not a question really of some of these things. It's not a question of technology, a question of how to use it strategically. Some people think, okay, well, we're with the modern times, we're on Facebook. It's like, no, a lot of these kids, their grandmothers are on Facebook. Just because you're on Facebook doesn't mean it's how do you use it from a marketing point of view? You have to use it strategically for it to be of any use. Otherwise, people just ignore it. So, technology is, it's a tool that really everybody has to know how to use pretty much at this point. The future of the job market is going to depend heavily on people being able to use technology. And, when people say I don't like technology, I say, well, how do you communicate with people? It's like, well, I talk. I go, well, what if they're somewhere else? I go, well, I write a note. How do you write the note? With a pen. I thought you just said you don't use technology. So a pen is technology. It might be old technology, but it's technology. So it's a tool. And so whatever the tools are that we use today, I need to stay up with that kind of stuff. In terms of management style, as I kind of indicated before, I like to work as a collaborator. You've got people in place and the good people in place and you know what they're doing. I like to work with them, not against them. I don't know what the staffing structure is, but if there are people who would work for me, I don't look at them as working for me. I look at them as working with me. I don't look at them as the people to get my job done. I look at them as the people that I can learn from. I don't believe in coming and imposing my will on people who have been doing what they do and they do it well and that kind of thing. So, so my own personal management style is to work with the strengths that people have, and I'd rather be more of a supervisor than a boss, and just be the boss when I absolutely have to. But other than that, I think your people are your resources. So that's how I like to work with people.
Thank you. That's great.
Question.
Do any of my colleagues, do any of you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
I have one question. We interviewed another colleague who said that he had moved from the conservative movement he moved from the reform movement to the conservative movement, and he told us what went into that. You've done the other move. You moved from the conservative, you were ordained at JTS and moved to the reform movement. What made you decide to do that, or what factors went into that?
Well, primarily it was where I started working at Hillel, and the way we revitalized our Hillel, which was at Tulane, was by focusing on the Reform students, because you just didn't get a lot of traditional students coming to Tulane. If they wanted to remain traditional, they would have stayed in New York, at Columbia, Boston University, any of those places that have very strongly identified Jewish communities. So the people who the Jews from the Northeast kind of came to Tulane to get away from it. They came to play and not worry about, be among Jews, but not worry about being, quote, Jewish. Whereas the kids from the southern area were mostly from Reform backgrounds, and for them, Tulane was the most Jewish environment they were ever at. So that we empowered our Reform students to kind of lead what was going on in terms of our campus, and by following their leads and interests and implementing them, we were able to grow what was happening significantly, because that's who the demographics we were serving was. I also happen to live in this small area outside New Orleans that had the only new congregation that had opened up in 50 years. And it was Reform, and I lived there, and they actually grew to being ready for a full-time rabbi. So, I realized at that point, I really felt much closer to the Reform movement, because the things that you could do, there's a lot more opportunity for the kinds of creativity that they were looking for that you couldn't do in a conservative movement. The musical, like bringing out the drums and the keyboard and the bass guitar and things like that during services, that you can't do that in the conservative movement. And I just felt like at that point, I felt that the opportunities were much greater if I weren't bound by Jewish law, rather than adopting the current Reform concept is Jewish law has a vote but not a veto. So it's not that I've abandoned Jewish law, but it's that in a sense I've kind of redefined it and found that I'm much more comfortable being able to do things that we as a community want to do, whether they're supported by Jewish law or not. So that's kind of what brought me down that path.
Thank you. Wendy or David, anything? Okay. Jeff, I want to thank you very much for spending this time with us. Our process, just so you know, we're going to be, we have another interview scheduled in a week, and then we'll be meeting as a committee to try to move the process forward. So, so I would expect that sometime after the 1st of March, you should be hearing from me about steps going forward.
Okay.
So I really thank you so much for your time.
I also want to share with you, and I don't just say this at every interview, but I have a real sense of passion for this position. Working with my colleagues as part of a team. So in terms of the different positions that I'm looking at out there, I have the most passion about this one. So there are other positions that I would clearly turn down, knowing that this is in the works. In fact, I just want to share that. Not that influences your decision, but I want you to know where I am. That I would. This is an opportunity I would love.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and we will be in touch soon. So
okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Take
care. Thank you all.
Okay, I guess everyone's signed off.